Hello, and
Hi,
welcome to the
everyone.
musical QuaranStream. I'm Bri,
And I am Glenn.
and we've kind of started this past week imagining what we think certain musicals we have never seen, but we've been able to see their soundtracks, or listen to their soundtracks, rather. Looks like we got a little bit of a lag going on here.
Yeah.
But we will persist, and I'll kind of keep on talking while the
While the
gear
camera
grinds.
tries to catch up with us.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we found that Saturdays, I think everybody's on the internet,
Yes.
regardless of what goes on during the week. But we'll keep on trying here. I know I've been working from home, as I'm sure many of you have, and I was on a very important call yesterday. Where the power just decided to go out, so I had no internet, I had nothing. I was on my phone to use the sound side of it, but gosh, that made training really hard. So I appreciate that most of my work can be done at home, but it is a little bit disappointing when you have something important like that and you really can't move forward. So I'm looking forward to going back to the office whenever possible. It looks like we got our image back up. So just as a reiteration, we're
on this camera now.
Perfect. That's why you always got to have a backup camera.
Yes.
We're theater people. We know that nothing works on the first try, so you always have to have backup upon backup.
Yeah.
So anyway, today we're doing It's a Bird, It's a Plane, It's Superman. And if you didn't know that there was a superhero musical before Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark, we're here to introduce you to that. One of the most famous songs from it is You've Got Possibilities,
Yes.
which was used in a Pillsbury ad a few years ago. So when we were listening through this and prepping for this episode, I really just wanted to eat canned biscuits.
Bristol is checking in with us. Hello,
Hi.
Bristol. Nice to see you. And yes, last time we did a very new, very recent musical. And
Which
Juliet,
makes sense why we wouldn't be able to see it.
Yeah, and Juliet just opened recently. This is a much more classical musical. It's a bird.
60s?
Yeah, It's a Bird, It's a Plane, It's Superman. Debuted in 1966. And interestingly enough, it's Superman, one of the most popular characters in the history of comics. And yet, I think the musicals for Annie and even Lil Abner are probably better known than this show.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was like, I don't think I knew anything about Little Abner as a comic book or as a comic strip, but I did know like Little Abner was done a few years at my high school before I got to high school. So as like a middle schooler, I would be able to see that being performed. And I definitely remember the Jubilation to Colin Pone. I remember that. So I feel like, I think that's an accurate representation that there were comics that were definitely more popular on stage than they were probably by comic standards.
And kids who grew up in the 80s, Annie was on television pretty much constantly through that time. So Annie is a musical that we're really familiar with. But yeah, the Superman musical kind of hit in 1966. Was on Broadway for a little while, not a very long run from what I understand.
Yeah,
and then just kind of sank without a trace.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that there is a soundtrack that we can find, because sometimes with a lot of these shows, like I'll talk about, I really loved Wallace Shawn's Three Penny Opera, which was on Broadway like about 15 years ago. And there was never a recording. They never thought that it was something that would make a lot of money or that was worth the investment, even though it had Cyndi Lauper and Alan Cumming and Nellie McKay and really, I think, like pop stars in it.
Yeah.
But I cannot find a recording of that for love or money. Like it just doesn't exist. Whereas this, which I do not believe is really popular, but if you do know that it is popular, please tell us down in the comments.
Yes, tell us in the comments.
We would love you to kind of tell us what you know about superheroes, superhero musicals, and anything about Superman or opinions about this, so please feel free. Or if you know a good moisturizer, my skin is so dry, it's so cold. Please tell me what you like to moisturize your hands and your face with. I'm so itchy. It's driving me nuts.
And I just want to throw in really quick, because I always throw this in, another musical that never really saw a soundtrack released. Not even one of these, like, studio chorus sings the song soundtracks.
Or concept album.
Was Bobby Boris Pickett. who, of course, is famous for the Monster Mash, actually wrote a musical that was a satire of like old-style Universal monster movies called "I'm Sorry, the Bridge is Out, You'll Have to Stay the Night." And I actually think it is more popular than this show.
Well, it's definitely done by a lot of small theaters.
Yeah, it gets a lot of community theater love. A lot of high schools still produce that musical, and yet I have never been able to find a cast recording of any sort with it. Anyway, little bit more historical context for this show. Like we said, it released in 1966. So 1966, it would have been a while after the Superman television show, The Adventures of Superman, went off the air, which of course was very popular in its time. It would have been a few years, it would have been a few years after the Superman radio show, which at one point was arguably one of the most powerful broadcasts in the United States. It's credited with helping to bring down the KKK.
Yeah, I was going to say there's that really famous Drunk History episode. If you go online and look up Drunk History from Comedy Central, they'll talk about this, of how Superman fought the KKK.
Yeah, where like Southern reporters who were investigating the Ku Klux Klan, which a lot of people tried to like play down at the time, passed information about it to the Superman radio show, which then fictionalized it, but fictionalized it in such a way that the Klan members and their families knew exactly who was being talked about.
Yeah, it was using all the code words and kind of mocking them so that it wasn't cool anymore.
It was very clearly Superman was fighting against the Klan.
Right,
So, suddenly the Klan members went home and saw their kids playing Superman, beating up Klan members, and so it was a very, very huge part, in addition to, of course, the popularity of the comics. And 1966 also would be when the Batman television series premiered. So Adam West and Burt Ward as Batman were just coming to television as this musical was coming out on Broadway.
Now, I'll be honest, just a slight tangent. The other thing I'd recommend is if you're looking after this musical, if you know Star Kid, they've done a very Potter musical, and they've been around for, 20 years, for a long time. I know that they were probably in college when we were, graduated, and have been doing musicals since then. If you go on YouTube and you go look up Star Kid, they have a production called Holy Musical Batman, which I love, and I wish I knew where that shirt was, because I have a shirt from it.
Star Kid is known for raucous, hilarious, completely unauthorized musicals.
Yeah. With bad words, so they do curse.
Yeah.
But what I like about it is, at the end of the day, it's all about friendship and how important friends are. And of course, we kind of mentioned that a few episodes ago, that is our favorite type of show, is where through the power of friendship, we all, are stronger together. So.
And Holy Musical Batman, one of their best shows from that era when they were doing parodies. I put it with that one and Starship.
Yeah.
Which is Starship Troopers, the musical, with puppets for the aliens. So.
Yeah, but I think that when we were listening through this soundtrack, I kept thinking about that, and I kind of wanted Batman to show up.
Yes. All right, so we should get started going through the soundtrack here, right? All right, so we open with the overture, and typically, like when the overture started playing, I was like, well, we know what's going on during the overture. The band is playing the overture. But there's dialogue during the overture. So the overture basically provides us with a look at the standard Superman story, basically. There's criminals, Lois Lane is in danger, Superman saves Lois Lane, Lois Lane tries to get Superman to hang out for a little bit with her.
Oh, it's really funny, because it's like, oh, would you care for a dance, Superman? Where did that man go?
Yeah.
Superman don't dance, apparently.
Yeah, Superman does not like dancing.
And cats.
1960s tights were not great for dancing, so. But anyway, that's what the overture provides us with. It provides us with a look at what a Superman story is. Yeah. And does it very succinctly for, I guess, the three people going who had never seen Superman in any form.
Yeah. Well, and also kind of give a rundown of the basic gist of the story, because I think we're going to get into some characters that we just want to make people familiar with, because we doubt that you have heard or watched this, but if you have, let us know in the comments. If you saw it on Broadway, we'd love to know. If not, or if you had this soundtrack as one of your favorites, we'd love to know as well.
So, do we want to do a quick thing on the story, or just go through
just a quick synopsis, just to get everybody on the right page, because we already know Superman, Lois Lane, they're in this, but, kind of who's the antagonist.
Yeah, so we have basically two antagonists in this show, and you have, on the Clark Kent, Lois Lane side, basically, you have Max Menken, and Max Menken... There have to have been high fives among the writers when they came up with Max Menken is the other guy who's after Lois Lane. Yeah. Like L and M, they're right there next to each other in the alphabet. Yeah. Max Menken is another columnist at the Daily Planet who is, basically he sounds like he's their city desk columnist. He's very gossipy, very I've got my finger on the pulse of the city sort of thing. Maybe arts, we don't know. I mean, they kind of have a dig at him ruining vaudeville later, so... And, but he is very jealous of Clark Kent, because Lois Lane always flirts with Clark Kent, but Max Menken is like, I'm the handsome and rich guy, she should be flirting with me, not with the guy from Smallville. Yeah. And then the other one is Dr... I've completely gone up on his name. All right, that's what Wikipedia exists for.
Yes. But apparently, no Lex Luthor, which was surprising to me, because I thought that was kind of classic Superman lore. I mean, we've watched Supergirl, the CW series, for a while, and he's even in that, so...
Yeah, I mean, Lex Luthor goes back as far as Superman as a character. And yet, they decided not to have Lex Luthor, they decided to have Dr. Abner Sedgwick. Dr. Abner Sedgwick, who is described as a 10-time Nobel Prize loser, who is so angry at the world for rejecting his scientific genius that he decides he's going to destroy the world's symbol of good, Superman. I'm going to move the camera a little bit. Get Bri more on camera. There we go.
I know, oh no, my arm.
Yeah, all of her gestures are going off screen. So yeah, he's, and you look at that character and you're like, you couldn't have just said Lex Luthor. You had to go with Dr. Abner Sedgwick.
I don't think I've ever heard of Dr. Abner Sedgwick anywhere. I mean, maybe if they're in a Zack Snyder version of a DC movie, somebody can let me know in the comments, but it's not something I'm familiar with.
We were talking about this earlier. In academic realms, I think the two most written about subjects are the Bible and Sherlock Holmes. But in terms of actual pages in print, written about a character, authorized by the people in control of the character, official part of the story, it's like Superman and Batman each probably have more pages in print than any other character. So Dr. Abner Sedgwick, I'm not going to say he's not a character from the comics. I've never seen him in the comics, but he could have been a major villain from 1963 to 1967.
Well, but I feel like, and you can kind of tell me if you don't think this is correct, but I think that they're actually doing stuff in the 30s. That this is a musical in the 60s, but I think that they're doing Depression era Superman.
Very much. Yeah, sounds a lot like, at very least in, I think, the 40s or the early 50s would have been the television series. Yeah. Because I think it sounds a lot like they're playing with what people would have seen in the television series. Yeah. Hi, Lola.
Hey, if you thought Lola was coming on the episode, you're right.
Yes.
Take a shot. Do a high five. Hey. You win. Lola's here.
Yes.
Offer her opinion about superheroes.
Yes.
And Streaky the Super Cat.
Right.
But I do think that there's a bit of a language thing. I think one of Max's songs where he's like, yeah, give me the old freezeroo.
Yeah.
Which definitely sounds late 30s, early 40s. Bye, Lola.
So at this point, we have just covered the overture.
Yeah.
Back
on track.
Getting back on track. So the next song is Doing Good. And this is Superman's real chance to introduce himself to the audience. And the basic idea is this is Superman, long day of superheroing, takes off his cape, puts on his suit, and becomes Clark Kent.
Yep. Which has a very awkward rhyme of, I take off my cape after a long day of thwarting rape.
Yes.
Which I was like, well, that's pretty big in 1966.
I'm pretty sure that is literally within, like, the first 2 lines of the song.
Very first song.
It's like, it's a certain satisfaction when you take off your cape and you know you've thwarted murder, robbery, and rape.
Yes.
And it's like, well, that escalated quickly.
Yes. And also, I think you brought up a really funny point of Superman saying his day is done.
Yes. He says his day is done at the beginning of the song, which I'm like, Superman, don't you know crimes happen at night, too? In fact, it's easier to work during the day and thwart crime at night. I just want, like, Batman to be walking by in the background, clocking in as he's taking off his costume.
And I think that that's kind of like the major problem, like, I've had with the show, and we talked about this a little bit, is I think it's like 75 to 95% there. Like, there's not a whole heck of a lot wrong with it as far as a Broadway show, but I feel like sometimes there are things off with the melody, or there's things off with the lyrics, and I mean, not any Broadway show happens in a hurry. Like, things take a long time. There's workshop and development and writes and rewrites, but I feel like there's not a lot of care.
It definitely feels like at a certain point in each song, the writing team was like, that's close enough. Superman will sell the rest of this.
Yeah, and I was like, and that might not be true. Like, I mean, probably everybody really loved this piece and really thought they did right by Superman and it was amazing. But for me, like, there's about a quarter of the songs, which I think just existing in the Broadway canon are great, are perfect, and a lot of the things that I look for are like, is it kind of like a 1960s voice? Is it kind of a 1960s style? Would I have heard something like this somewhere else? And is this kind of more transferable? And the transferable thing is really just a me thing.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really like a lot of really specific things because I like a lot of universal stories or things that, like, if I hear Lois Lane sing about I'm in love with the perfect guy and he doesn't notice me, I think that that's really relatable, like, as a person. But when it's all of a sudden it's like, well, Superman, he's a big duper man, you're just like, I can't sing that. It's not a great audition piece.
Which that brings us into the third song, which is Lois Lane singing We Need Him, which is Lois Lane talking about being in love with Superman, who is also so important to the world that she doesn't feel like she can monopolize Superman. And it's exactly that Bri was just talking about, is the lyrics are written so specific to the characters that it loses any sort of universality, that you're not really seeing a universal between Lois Lane and Superman, which the comics always played off of that universality of if this person only knew who I was in the rest of my life, sort of thing. That was the thing that they were selling in that relationship. And in this case, it's just so specific that it kind of hurts the song.
Well, I just think that there's only so many times you can talk about, like, Superman specifically. Like, I think that it's perfectly fine to reference it. Obviously, it's a Superman musical, but I think, you know, there's a song later where Superman talks about, oh, I thought I was a man of steel, but I guess I'm just a man of straw. And I'm like, it hits a little bit too hard on the nose sometimes, because I think that we've all had an experience where we feel like we're really confident, we know what we're doing, we're really strong in a particular area, and then somebody just knocks the wind out of our sails. And I think that when you relate it so closely to a character, it's really hard. And I kind of talked about a lot, you know, in our prep for this, Groundhog Day, where it's like there's plenty of good songs in Groundhog Day, very talented people, but a lot of times, like, it's so specific to the movie or the show or Puxatawny or something that you're just like, well, I can't sing this about everything else.
Now, so far, by the way, all of that sketched out plot summary we did, we have not seen one bit of this plot yet in the musical from the music. We're going now into track number 4 of the soundtrack, which is It's Superman, and we're not going to see any more of the plot here in this song either. This is basically the people of Metropolis singing about, hey, look, it's Superman.
I know, it's like, I just kind of felt like it's a very, oh gosh, like beginning of Music Man. Like you just imagine people like on a train or on something where they're like all of a sudden like, you know, going through their daily commute, and then all of a sudden they're just saying, hey, but Superman takes care of our town, and that's great.
Yeah. and you know, it's like if you get near a plot, jump on it.
And it does follow like a traditional kind of Broadway structure, like Little Town Song, I Want Song, 11 O'Clock Number. They do have all that, so they're definitely following a formula. It's just, I feel like one of the things that we talked about is it's ripe for updating. Like if you wanted to like try to update this and just change like about 10%, 25% of it, it could run. I think it would be successful.
I think you just hit on with saying it's definitely following the formula. You just hit on one of the major problems with this show, which is that it sounds a lot like when Mad Magazine would do a comic about imagine such and such the musical.
Yeah.
That it's so much a Broadway musical formula all along that it almost sounds like a parody of itself.
Yeah. Well, we talked about you know, even Superman's voice. Like if you guys are able to listen to this, we'd always love to share these, but we just like don't have money for copyright and stuff. So, but if you're able to find a copy and you're able to listen, Superman just sounds so much like Superman, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It just doesn't read very believable, I guess, or it doesn't have a modern sensibility. So I think it would sound very hokey to modern ears.
Hi, Jenny. Jenny's just checking in. Don't worry, we've still got plenty of the soundtrack to get through here. We're getting distracted too. So, but yeah, Bob Holliday performs the role of Clark Kent / Superman, and honestly, good classic Broadway voice. I said
like Alfred Kerr. Like it's really that like operatic baritone,
that big, bold, round sound,
which is believable for Superman.
Yeah. Now, I was like, I know it's a completely modern critique of this. I was like, I'd like to hear him sound a bit different when he's Clark Kent. But, or hear him sound a little bit different when he's Superman, but he's singing about having doubts or something like that. But everything is in that his Superman big round voice sort of thing. We're moving on from It's Superman, which is the crowd going, hey, it's Superman, to, I guess, our first inkling of the plot.
Yeah.
Which is We Don't Matter at All.
Which is a great song. It's one of like the top 3, I think. However, it's like when we were listening to it, I'm like, who is this? It's somebody hitting on Lois Lane. That's all I can figure out.
There's a line in there about, is this scientist hitting on me or something like that. But it is not, this is the important thing, it is not Dr. whatever his name is. It is not the main villain. Because, you know, as I've said before, I try not to look at character lists, but I look at the actors who are singing so I can identify the characters and go, oh, that's that character from this song. And this character is played by Don Chastain. And this is literally the only song Don Chastain has in the entire soundtrack. So this is not the villain. This is not the main villain. But it's a scientist who's hitting on Lois Lane. And from a modern perspective, it's hilarious. Because, from a modern perspective, what he's very clearly doing is he's negging Lois Lane. His entire strategy for hitting on her is, well, when you think about it, on a scientific level, we're absolutely worthless. Yes. Nothing we do matters.
And it reminds me very much of that Animaniacs song.
Yes.
So it's like, it's a great big world.
Yeah. It's a great big universe, and we're all really puny. It's that song.
It's literally that song.
And then Lois Lane has a response, which basically comes down to, well, yes, maybe on such and such a level, we can't affect the entire universe and everything, but people matter.
Well, and she's like, but I am special.
Yes.
Because I'm dating Superman.
Yes. Which I was like, again, that's very progressive that she recognizes negging and is like, oh no, you're not getting anywhere with that strategy. So then we have Revenge.
Which I don't like.
Yeah.
It's the villain song.
Yeah, let's get that name again. Dr. Abner Sedgwick.
Yeah, I feel like I wanted it to keep going to a patter song.
Yeah.
Something about, like, if you lose the Nobel Prize 10 times, right?
Mm.
Like, it's needling at you. It's
Yeah.
Chinese water torture, right? It's something that would feel very stabby to me, where it's very driving, and you like, it seems like it had the potential to be a big villain song. And I said it sounds much more like Don Quixote, kind of leisurely traveling about the countryside, or I forget what you were saying about it. It's like telling stories to children in the afternoon.
Oh yeah,
or something.
yeah. It's well, the whole point of the song is him basically describing the 10 times in his life that he did work that he feels should have won the Nobel Prize, and then who won instead of him.
Yeah.
And from what I can tell, just looking through the lyrics for the song and everything, he's genuinely naming, like, real life Nobel Prize winners as this is who won instead of me. But it's nothing about it. It needs that pickup and drive.
Yeah, I just felt like if we had Lin-Manuel Miranda, like, rewrite this would be kind of like a great villain rap.
Oh, yeah.
A great villain patter song.
All right, and so there we have our first element of the plot.
6 songs in.
Yes. And my theory on where I said we don't matter at all gives us a little bit of intro to the plot. My theory is the scientist we hear in that song is the guy who actually, like, runs the lab that Dr. Sedgwick works at. But now the next song is The Woman for the Man, which finally introduces Max Menken, our second villain of the show.
Which is a pretty good song as well.
Yeah, it's a pretty good song. And it's basically, the idea of it is, he's telling Lois Lane, you're the woman for the man who has everything.
Who's me.
Yes. So it is basically, between the two of them, sort of this, I don't get why you're not into me, I have everything.
And he does his own tap break. It's great.
Which has a line from Lois that he's doing the tap break, and Lois says, Max, you killed vaudeville. Do you really have to go on to journalism?
I mean, pretty good.
Yeah, the writing is not bad in this. It just never feels complete.
Yeah.
And then from there, from The Woman for the Man, we get into the song that has survived this show.
Yes.
It is a song that people hear a lot, don't know that it comes from this show.
You've got possibilities.
Yeah. And this is not Lois Lane.
Man, I want a crescent roll.
Yeah. It's been used in Pillsbury dough commercials and things like that. But this is not Lois Lane. This is another female character played by Linda Lavin, who apparently, I think there has to be some connection of Max Menken trying to drive a wedge between Lois Lane and Clark Kent. He introduces him to this woman or whatever it is.
And later she does say something like, hi, Clocky baby.
Yeah.
Like something very... I said, I think she sounds a little bit like Miss Adelaide from Guys and Dolls.
Yeah. The whole song is basically her talking to Clark Kent and being like, if you wore a suit that was tailored a little bit better, if you, like, straightened up and didn't slouch all the time, it's like, you're actually a very handsome guy. A girl could really like you. You've got possibilities. And it's very seductive. It's very playful. It's a great song. And it's performed by Linda Lavin. And, yeah.
She has, like, the 2 best songs in the whole show.
Yes.
She only has 2 songs, but they're the 2 best.
Yeah. And it's a fun song. And what we sort of see here that I think we get into with this is her whole thing is, like, she's trying to teach Clark Kent to not be such a pushover all the time. Which, if you know anything about Clark Kent is, by definition, supposed to be a pushover all the time. All right, so then from You've Got Possibilities, we get into What I've Always Wanted, which is a song that hurts my soul.
Great. I mean, to be honest, up until this point, I forgot it existed.
Yeah.
Sorry.
This is the I Wish song.
Oh, yeah, this is Lois's...
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, not a great song.
Yeah, because basically it's Lois Lane talking, and I get the feeling this is after Clark Kent has started to be a little bit flashier, a little bit showier, be a completely different type of guy. is Lois Lane basically singing about all I ever really wanted was to be a wife with children. And now maybe, I have to question, like, do I really want that anymore? And my whole thing listening to it is I'm like, yeah, that's not Lois Lane.
She's always been a career girl.
Lois Lane likes being a reporter.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this is where we talked about it earlier. There's millions of pages in print for Superman. I don't know. Maybe there were stories published that had Lois Lane imagining that it would be really nice to just be Superman or Clark Kent's wife and live in a little house with a picket fence or something like that. But generally speaking, the Lois Lane that I grew up reading and everything like that, that was not Lois Lane.
Yeah,
So,
Alan Menken does it better with Somewhere That's Green.
Yes.
Similar type of I Want song, but not very strong, not very good, and not very well-fitting for the character. I think when we listened to this, I said something like, I think that if she talked about how hard it was to want this and also her career and went back and forth, that might have made it a stronger song, but right now it just seems so one-sided. Yeah. And the premise starts off with, like, I love the unattainable man, and all I want to be is a wife. And it's like, wait, but that doesn't really connect. Yeah.
By the way, Bri's most commonly heard phrase as we were listening to the soundtrack was, I don't hate it. Basically, that was her thumbs up for a song was, I don't hate it.
Yeah, like it can exist. It's fine.
So then we get into It's Super Nice. And this is, I was like...
laughing.
Yeah.
Laughing.
When I was listening to it with the sound of the singers and everything, I was like, I could see this as chorus girls dressed like Goldie Hawn from Laugh-In with the bikini and the makeup and face paint and everything. and then
the mashed potato.
And then I realized 1966, I think Goldie Hawn was actually doing that on Laugh-In at that time. Yeah. So
we kind of said, like, this is probably something like the marketing of Superman or something like that. Yeah. Where it's like all of a sudden he's on TV, he's toys, he's blah, blah,
blah. Instead of just being Superman flying around doing good for everybody, there's now, like, flash and pizzazz and dazzle for Superman. And probably the worst part of this song is that it's the finale to Act 1.
Yeah. Which is a great song, but it's not a finale.
Yeah. A finale is supposed to, like, pull everything together and have, like, a big moment that crashes into intermission that makes you want to come back and see what's going to happen next. Mm-hmm. And as a finale for Act 1, this is just kind of like, oh, that was it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right, so then we have the old track. We have them playing a medley, basically what we've heard so far, which goes into Max Menken's next song, So Long, Big Guy.
Which, again, I was like, I did not have a problem with it, but he says So Long, Big Guy like 50 times. Yes. And I was like, if I'm a journalist, I have a really great vocabulary, and I just would love to be like, so long, bye-bye, ta-ta, farewell. Like, I was like, I want synonyms for goodbye. I don't know. I was like, I wanted it a little bit more punchier in the way of lyrics. I didn't necessarily mind the melody 100%, but it just felt like if he was grinding Superman into the dirt with his vocabulary, like saying so long, big guy 50 times was like, okay, great, shut up.
Yes, and it's... I feel like it also contributes to a lot of confusion for me in the story, because it is Max Menken singing about Superman. What we're learning through this song is people don't like Superman now as much as they liked him when he was the humble do-gooder flying around. Superman's starting to act flashy, and everybody's starting to be like, oh, that Superman, he's all surface. It's all just show. So this is Max Menken being like, yeah, I never liked Superman anyway. I'm like, but Max, your main thing was you didn't like Clark Kent. You didn't want Clark Kent around.
I cannot like two people.
So, yeah, of course, but
it jumbles the plot.
Yeah, it jumbles the plot a little bit, because he doesn't know that Clark Kent is Superman. But we get that sort of thing, which then also goes into, we hear a little bit more of sort of the downfall of Superman talked about in The Strongest Man in the World.
Which I think, like, again, fine as a concept,
Mhm.
but there was just so many things, like, why is the strongest man in the world the bluest man in the world? Why is the man of steel now a man of straw? Like, it could have been clever in another song, but it wasn't for me.
If Superman didn't want to be blue, he should have picked a different color scheme for his costume. But it is Superman basically being like, hey, what's wrong? I'm still the strongest man in the world. Why don't people like me anymore?
He's having emotional crisis.
Yeah.
He's sensitive.
And then we have Linda Lavin return.
Which is great.
Yeah.
This is also a really fun song. It's called Ooh, Do I Love You?
Do you love
Do
you?
you love you?
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And I think she is singing, I think we agreed to, like, Clark Kent, maybe?
Yeah.
Saying, like, now that you're full of yourself, you're a lot more attractive.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a cute song. It's a great song.
It's a very fun song. It's got that thing in there about, like, she starts seeing Clark Kent as, like, such an egotist that he is
more attractive.
actually dating himself. Yeah. So there's a lot of lines about, like, when boy meets boy, and when you lit your own cigarette, you knew it was meant to be, sort of thing.
Well, and it goes from, like, this very, like, Betty Boop, like, I'm always like, oh, like a little woo, and then, like, like a man-eater, like the big shimmy. So I think, like, it has enough character that it kind of carries the song through, and I think that, as a performer, as somebody who likes musical theater, I think that that's a real kind of cute number. It's a little bit like Ula and the Producers.
Yeah. So. It's fun. I'd say after You've Got Possibilities, it's the second best song in the show.
And both by Linda Lavin. So.
Yes.
she really lucked out on this musical.
Yeah, and she sells the songs too.
Yeah.
So. And then we've got You've Got What I Need. Not a great song, but a really interesting song.
No, you know what? Like, I'll come around. It's not the best song in the whole wide world, right? But it's the villains singing to each other.
Yes.
And it's a villain love song. And I don't think that relationship is really earned by listening through the soundtrack. Maybe they have a lot of lines together that it sounds really... But it's kind of cute to hear kind of two guys being like, you got the brains and you got the money, and honey, that's a great relationship.
And it is literally all phrased as, this would be a song to a girl about a song from a guy to a girl about you complete me, but it's two villains singing about how they complete each other's villainy.
Yeah, and I think there's even a thing that's like, ooh, lovey.
Yes.
They have a line to each other, oh, lovey.
They actually refer to each other as sweetie, honey, lovey, all throughout the song. So it's very clear what they're going for of, like, these two guys are into each other.
Yeah, it's like they're holding hands, spinning in a field of flowers.
Yes.
It's definitely that type of song. So overall,
that's how I would stage it.
Overall, a really cute number, but I feel like it just felt out of place. Like, the villain songs just aren't what I would classify as a villain song. Like, I just remember, kind of going a little bit off tangent when I heard Moana with Tamatoa's song. Great song, but, like, it was not a villain song as I was expecting it. Like, one of my favorite villain songs is from Dr. Facilier in Princess and the Frog.
Friends on the Other Side is a great song.
Yeah, so it's like when I think of these villain songs, I think villain songs. And Tamatoa was just such a, like, cool character, singing about how great he was, which is, like, certainly...
all delivered in a dead-on David Bowie impersonation.
Yeah. So it's, like, a great song, but not what I would call, like, a great villain song. Yeah. And so I feel like that's very similar to this, You Got What I Need. It's a cute song. It's a cute concept. Maybe if all the other songs were a little bit stronger or the relationships were more developed, I might have been like, yes, but this whole time I was waiting for a stab, 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 and punch, 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 and that's coming, but it's not a villain song.
Yes. So now we've got, so You've Got What I Need. We go into It's Superman, reprise.
I don't know. We hear the song like 3 times, and I'm like, why?
Yes.
Why 3 reprises of It's Superman?
So the people again singing about, like, how much we need Superman, and look at Superman flying through the sky. And then, we've heard that all before. Then we get into I'm Not Finished Yet, which is Lois Lane.
This is ridiculous.
And it's Lois Lane describing, she's not certain what happened. So she seems to remember there was Max, and then there were a bunch of Chinese people around her, which is very... I'm going to say, even for 1966, very politically incorrect, the way she refers to Chinese people.
It's so weird. It's so weird. And it's like, it's all echoey, so it's like going on in her head, right?
Then some evil scientist, and she comes...
And then more Chinese people.
Yes, and she comes up with, so I figured it out. I've been kidnapped and tied up, and I'm in the middle of a Chinese powerhouse.
Or like, what just happened? Because like, my first reaction was, does Lois Lane have to have some detective skills to figure out where she is to tell Superman to come get her? I thought it was just she yelled help and then Superman came and got her. I didn't think Lois Lane was like Batman levels detective on this.
Isn't that Superman's whole thing? People shout help and he follows their voice to where they are.
Because then she looked right, Superman, I found out I'm in a Chinese powerhouse. And we're like, what?
Yes.
This was a thing?
It's like that.
Maybe in the comics. I don't know. Tell us.
Not to get too nerdy about the comics, but Jimmy Olsen had a radar signal watch that just emitted a supersonic or a high-frequency beep.
And no Jimmy Olsen in this.
No one could hear except Superman, and he would just activate it, and it didn't send out a signal in Morse code or anything. It was just, there's that high-pitched beep. I better follow it to wherever Jimmy is. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I have talked myself hoarse.
He's very passionate.
I'm very passionate about comic book characters being portrayed properly on stage.
And there's no Jimmy Olsen in this.
No
which
Jimmy
is
Olsen.
devastating as well.
Yes. So then, from I'm Not Finished Yet, we go into Pow! Bam! Zonk! The title has an exclamation point after every single one of those. Pow! Bam! Zonk! Again. Same year that Batman debuted on television.
And like I said, I was like, I think I can understand, going into a violent fugue state so that you just, punch things with sound effects. But I did not expect it would come from Superman. I thought this would come from the villain. So it's like Superman goes into this violent fugue state, beats up a ton of guys, and remembers he is Superman, and he's a good guy, and he doesn't need to be all fancy and...
The entire song is Superman fighting people to rescue Lois Lane. It's lots of punching. You hear lots of screaming and shouting from the guys that he's punching, and pow, bam, zonk, and somehow beating up a ton of people and leaving the bodies scattered around the stage results in Superman rediscovering who he really is.
And that he's a good guy.
This is a Batman story, not a Superman story. I could see Batman being like, oh, I just remembered, I'm the guy what punches people.
Yes.
Superman shouldn't have that.
Which is why I kept thinking of Holy Musical Batman.
Yes.
I was like, oh, we really need to go watch that next.
Yes. All right, so pow, bam, zonk. And then what do we have next, Ray? What do we have next?
It's the end.
The finale. The end of the show.
Like, literally, I was like, what? That's it? That's all we got?
Yeah, I was like, hey, honey, you want to know the worst part of this song? It's the end of the show. Because it's
Superman again.
Yeah.
Mashed up with You Got What I Need.
Yes. Not even You've Got Possibilities.
No.
You've got what the song the villains sing to each other.
Now all
the city sings to Superman. I'm sorry, guys. We are buffering like crazy here.
Yeah, but that's okay because we're at the end.
Yes, we just ended the show. And honestly, I don't know. Having heard the songs from Turn Off the Dark, do you think Turn Off the Dark is a bigger disappointment than It's a Bird, It's Plain, It's Superman?
No.
No.
No. I mean, I think Turn Off the Dark is the most wonderful thing ever? No. But, like, I like a lot of Turn Off the Dark, to be honest. I think villain songs are equally poor in both.
Yeah.
But I feel like I don't know what the curse or the struggle is with superheroes on Broadway. But I think, like the song says, you got possibilities. I think there's possibilities here, and I think, like, I'd love to retool it and see what could be made out of it. Because I think that there's a lot of cuteness in here. And I think if you made Lois Lane a dry wit, I think it would be great.
I think the two things that hurt this show the most from what we've heard of it,
Too many villains, plots that go nowhere.
Too many villains is a big part of it, but I think the thing that hurts it most, two things that hurt it most are, like we said, a lot of it fits into formula. A lot of it feels like by the numbers we looked at this and adapted it this way. And I think the other thing is it can't decide if it wants to make fun of comic books or do a serious story about comic book characters.
I disagree with that. I think that they are really trying their best. I mean, like, I don't think there is any malice or mockery of it, but I do think that there's too many emotional, internal songs.
Mockery might be the wrong direction from what I was thinking. I don't think mockery, I think self-awareness. I think there's a little bit in there, particularly anytime we hear the evil genius.
And we don't hear a lot of him. Like, we were just kind of like, what was even the point?
But his songs always come across to me as very self-aware about, I am a comic book villain.
I think it just sounded to me like there was like, I mean, I don't know any of the people in this, I'm sorry. I was like, I don't follow them as passionately as they do modern Broadway performers. Sorry, everybody. But I felt like it was almost like you could see Rex Harrison coming on to do the evil genius, and that was like the big draw. It's like, I come on, I talk for 2 minutes, and now I leave.
Yeah. So really quickly, though, let's talk about performance. I mean, like we said, Bob Holliday is Superman. Not a bad voice.
No, I thought he was great. I think he was perfectly cast.
If you like that classic Broadway sound of the big round tenor / baritone sort of thing, where he's a very, very, very manly voice through the whole thing, it's good. It's a very solid performance.
Yeah.
I
mean, like, I can't really speak to performance, I'll be honest, because like we're just hearing it.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not like we've ever seen this.
Yeah. Jack Cassidy plays Max Menken.
It's fine. I mean, like, they're all fine. Like, there's not that anybody's poorly cast.
Yeah.
It's just, like, they didn't have a lot of great melody or lyrics to work with. That's my final.
I think the thing from it all, like you say, nobody's bad. Linda Lavin steals the show. But nobody's bad.
And I think, like, for modern sensibilities, like I said, I want Lois to not be earnest. I want her to be witty and dry and acerbic, and it's just a personal preference. I think like that's the biggest thing that doesn't translate is we want more of a modern take on relationships and people.
Yeah, you don't want Lois Lane being like, all I've ever dreamed of is a house and 3 kids. You want nuts to you. You know? That's what you want.
Well, we're buffering a whole lot. We've reached the end of the piece. It's been about almost 50 minutes now, so I think it's time to end the show.
Yes. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. We really appreciate you guys showing up. Jenny, thanks for joining us. Bristol, hello. We love you all. Anybody who hasn't popped into the chat who we don't know you're there, but you're there with us, we love you.
Oh yeah, happy Easter.
Yes, happy Easter. Stay safe. Stay 6 feet away from people for Easter.
We just got hand sanitizer, soap.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting on fabric for masks.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm thinking of doing for the prizes, if anybody's still sticking around, is getting a t-shirt. You're going to get some homemade soap. You're going to get a homemade mask. We'll make it a whole big pandemic package.
Yeah. All right. And we will come up with a way to do that, a drawing or a wheel or something like that. But anyway, love you guys. Stay safe. Take care of yourselves because I'm not there to take care of you. All right? And bye. Let's transition out of here. Let's transition out of here.